All right. Awesome. Okay. Hey guys, I'm Alana from W1N, and today let's talk about mental health, shall we? Especially mental health on site, which is extremely important. And look, I'm no expert, so I thought I'd get on somebody who is. This is the awesome Leon Ruri. You might know him from Haka For Life, or you might have seen him on the traps when you were working at Barrow, like me, or you might have seen him on site at the moment where he is one of the best mental health advocates putting out different programs and helping people on site. So Leon, welcome. Thank you for coming on a Saturday.
Oh, thanks, Alana. It's great to be here. Good to, hey, what else could we do on a Saturday with our time being FIFO workers and stuff like that? So it's any day's a good day to have these conversations.
Absolutely, and they're so important. So yeah, thanks for spending some time with me. Look, I'm going to give you the floor. You're the absolute expert on this. You're on site right now. So what is going on in the industry? Has it gotten better with all the COVID stuff calming down?
Oh, look, yeah, there's lots of things that's happening in our industry currently. Yeah, look, I suppose on the back end of the COVID epidemic and all the restrictions and everything that's been in place and still remains in place. I've just come back from Telfer and Havron, Newcrest site for the last week. I've been up there, and masks are still in place. There's still people with COVID. I actually, coming back on the airplane, I thought I had COVID myself because my throat was sore and nose running last night. I'd done a rat test last night. It was negative. I've done one again this morning. I feel a lot better. So, you know, still a bit of, I suppose, worrying around that because it affects my ability to be able to work forward as well and have to isolate. So those things I've certainly seen a change, and the announcement in the last couple of weeks too with workers, with the mandates being sort of dropped now. So those workers that previously stood for pro-choice, I won't use the word anti-vax. I think that's a media terminology that's been created to criticise people that absolutely, as we're being taught in life, have the right to choose what they put into their bodies. So for those that were pro-choice and have now been offered the opportunity to come back to site, that's certainly causing a change in a positive way, most definitely for them, but also for the industry, because there's so many workers that we're short. Every site that I go to, their workers, worker numbers or worker shortages are present on all sites. So that's a great positive thing that's happening. One of the interesting things from the past week has been the release of the reports into the FIFO industry, and especially around the sexual misconduct that's been taking place. That's been a massive conversation, this not only online, but also on site. Whilst I was up on site, Newcrest actually done a presentation around an internal sort of review that they undertook about their company and the conversation that they're stepping into. And, you know, some of the figures that come back were nothing short of, my words inside of a meeting were nothing short of fucking shocking, to be straight with you. I couldn't believe the numbers, you know, that were there for women that have been sexually harassed or sexually assaulted, the rapes or attempted rapes that have taken place. You know, it was really confronting sort of information to have shared with me. But the other side of it too is in my work when I'm going on to sites right across Australia. I speak on 18 different mines at this time. And one of the patterns that I'm seeing is definitely a standout around relationships. And for those that have relationships inside of our industry, it's a challenge at any time, even when we're not in the FIFO industry. But when we're in an industry like ours, it takes you know, extra attention, a lot of energy to be able to manage our relationships, to keep them healthy, to make sure that just because we're FIFO workers, we're not losing our relationships. And it's so easy to, even in life when we're together, to be disconnected, let alone literally for the majority of us spending at least half of a year away from their better half, as many people might say. So with that comes a lot of challenges, and I see those sorts of patterns come up in a lot of the feedback that I do inside of sessions. People dealing with mental health issues themselves, and you know, wanting to know how to better manage their emotions, how to deal with things that they've been through in life. There's many that are still challenged with drug addictions and whatnot. And you know, what I find is that a lot of them are going into workplaces and really they're just on survival mode. And the fact that they haven't necessarily got powerful structures in place to manage what's going on in their personal lives or emotionally. And then they're in an industry which obviously the reward for money is great for those people that are connected to it. But as you find out, Lance, I mean, we've been in the industry for a while, that money's not everything at the end of the day. And I'm sure that people that are watching this will agree as well too. And, you know, it's important. I'm really, really passionate about the conversations that I go and have on different sites. I'm fortunate that the company that I'm consulting with allow me to just be me. And, you know, I believe that there's things from my previous experience being in the FIFO industry and working remotely, my work that I do where I go out and engage with different companies in the FIFO industry and whatnot, is that I see, you know, a different way of being able to connect with people, a more powerful way that really has the facade of, or the protection layer that we put up quite often in the FIFO industry disappeared, so that we can have straight conversations. So we're really getting to the core of understanding what people are dealing with, but also creating the space so that we speak to it. And I'm certainly not one for wasting people's time, for going out on the sites to tick boxes. As I say in a lot of my sessions that I have, is that I'm not out here to tick a box. You won't see this black duck out on any site at all, just so we can go there and tick a box. So, you know, this is a time that's got lots of different things that are happening inside of our industry, and lots of things that are good for conversations like this, because we can probably talk about anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? It's so funny. Like back in the day when I first started in 2001, you never heard about mental health. It was just never a thing. It's like, just go out there. It was almost like a taboo. And now it's everywhere because it is so absolutely important. And look, you're pretty much answering my questions as you're going anyway. But how do you find, you know, let's talk about the roster changes. There's been a lot of even times coming on 8 and 6s now. How do you find that that's actually affecting the guys out on site?
Positively, it's interesting, Lana, because I was out at the Havron site this week, and they've got a split roster there, 2 and 2 and 8 and 6. Yep. And a couple of the guys there on 8 and 6, and they said clearly this helps us with our mental health, this helps us with our lifestyles, helps them with their relationships. It's made such a massive difference of being on sites where some of them are still on 2 and 1s, but I'm noticing a real push towards even time. Obviously, the apprehension for workers themselves to go to an even time roster, even though it might be available for them, is the, you know, the fact that it hits them in the hip pocket, and financially, yep. I think it's about a third of their wages a year, you know, to go on even time rosters. But I'm seeing a push towards that, and people are definitely loving the 2 and 2 rosters as well. So I can see a change. I mean, I met you on Barrow Island when we were out there, and that was a 26 and 9 roster, and
yeah,
you know, I mean, I think I lost count of the amount of relationships that went pear-shaped from being on a roster at that length as well too. And you know, what I'm seeing, and just having a conversation, actually, it was at the Telfo mine, which I've just been to, but on my last visit with one of the guys that had been in the industry for 15 years, for 20 years, but he'd been on the last 15, was on a 2 and 1 roster, and his wife literally said to him, if you're going to continue to do that, we're done. And he changed because he was a bit worried about the money, but he went to a 2 and 2, and he said, it has been the best thing for my whole mining career. And he said, I can't believe I didn't jump on this earlier. But you know, we get caught worried about money. Today, money's a big thing in our world. And obviously, the attraction to going to FIFO is because it meets some of those financial needs, especially.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? The companies, the way that they're doing the 2 and 2s now, it's awesome because it's such a, you know, it's so conducive to having a positive workforce where they actually want to come to work. They're still earning the money, but then they've still got that time with their families, which is awesome, or to travel or whatever they want to do, which is really, really fantastic. But Leon, let's talk about, so you go out to site, you are an advocate for all these mental health programs. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the program that I'm delivering at the moment, I work for a company at this time called Sano Health, and they're a part of the Burn Cut group. And I hadn't actually heard of Burn Cut myself before I joined this company. I've got this role come about through the COVID pandemic. So even though it's negatively affected many people, for me, this opportunity with COVID wouldn't have arisen had it not been for that and our strict sort of border controls. And by that, I mean that a friend that rang me from Melbourne, it was actually a role that he had. And because he was from Melbourne, and every time they went to fly over here to Western Australia, they couldn't get into the state, or they had to quarantine for 2 weeks. I'd made a decision last year after coming back from Sydney for some work that I was doing with Veolia and BHP and Headland, was to stay because COVID had hit over east, and then I'd come back here and do this work. And from that, I had an interview with Sano Health and learned that Burncat are the biggest underground mining contractor in the world. They're a Perth-based company. They started out at Kambalda, back in about 87, I think it was, and then they've grown exponentially. And so I get to go out to each and every one of their sites right across Australia and to be able to deliver the mental wellbeing program for Sano Health. And the approach that we're taking is one of the things that I love about them is what they recognise is we've got sports scientists in the background, qualified professors, psychiatrists, psychologists, nutritionalists. The CEO is a guy by the name of Matt Hornsby. He's the former strength and conditioning manager for the St Kilda Football Club, and he was that for the last 4 years, and with Richmond Tigers for 12 years. We've got people like Kane Johnson, who was he was an Adelaide Crows premiership player. Trevor Hendy, for those that remember Trevor Hendy, he was like a god back in the day. And they do leadership stuff. So we do wellbeing leadership and injury prevention stuff. So there's a lot of Adam Selwood, for those that are into the Eagles and all of that sort of stuff. We've got a lot of those caliber of people. And then we got me. And what they love about me engaging with them is that they realise that they've got a whole lot of people with a lot of qualifications, but they had tried out a couple of different organisations to try and deliver their programs, and they weren't landing it with people.
Yeah.
And part of that reason is because many people that are watching this will know with FIFO industries that they still to a big degree do the old PowerPoint stuff, or death by PowerPoint, as we quite often say. And we've shifted. People have shifted in the way that they want to be communicated to. People have shifted in the manner in which they know how they can communicate themselves. And so, the ability to stimulate people and to engage them has shifted away from the old PowerPoint. If you want to put people to sleep, then get a PowerPoint. And I quite often say in my sessions with anybody in relation to the way that PowerPoints are structured, is that for the most significant conversations that we've ever had in our life, be they around a relationship or be they something, let's say, for a job opportunity where, there might be something that's available to you. How often have you pulled out a PowerPoint?
Yeah.
And the answer is never. So, it astounds me that companies then would think for the most important conversation in our FIFO industry, which is the conversation around mental wellbeing or mental health, why the fuck would they think that a PowerPoint's going to work then? Because it doesn't work in real life. And we've got to be able to step away from these things. So even though we use a framework of PowerPoints there, what I love about Sana is they allow me the opportunity just to have conversations like this with the crews. And I try and make it as organic as I can by just walking into those rooms and being able to connect in a unique way. I trained myself with self-development for nearly 5 years, and they teach you a lot about how to do this with rooms of people and to communicate differently. So the conversation, like what I said to Sano, is that we're missing the conversation. The conversation is not on the PowerPoint behind me or me standing to the side, coming into a pre-start and reading the PowerPoint word for word when you can read it. And I'm using it really as a means, as a facilitator to hide sometimes, because some of these rooms, stepping into some of these rooms, the energy is different, the crews are different. It can be an intimidating space. But for me, I'm a big demand on myself, Lance, and having myself be as sharp as I possibly can be. And that, I mean that if I'm announcing myself that I can make and cause a difference in this industry, then I have to train myself to a level and be at a place in a space for me to literally be able to come to these rooms, to step in there, to assess the room, and to be able to talk their language, to connect with them in a way that is organically their conversation, as if I was just a part of the team for however long that I'm going to be there for. And it's been working really, really effectively. And the approach that we're taking is a 5-pillar approach. So they're looking at the way that we connect. So that was, probably the most important place to start is our connection. Sort of, how do we show up in the workplace? How do we show up in life? And the way that we're delivering the program, or the best way that I created with them to sort of listen from, and even today, I mean, you can still do it today in this conversation, is we're not making anything wrong in life. Where you are right now in life is exactly where you are. Now, what there is that we'll have things that we're going really, really good at, and that we're really, really happy with. And then we've got other stuff that are probably at the other end of the scale, which we might not be happy with, or as I use the terminology and the language around, hey, we've got some work to do in those areas of life. And then we've got some stuff in the middle of life that are sort of, yep, we're sort of happy with, or might need some improving, or we might change a few things out. And so what I get them to do is listen from a space of nothing's wrong, but look at what might be missing so that we have to add something, or we might need to take some things out. And for me, some of the things that I share with them that I took out of my life so that life showed up a lot better was that I haven't drank for nearly 5 years now. It's either just gone 5 years or it's coming up 5 years. And a big one for me is about 5 years and 4 months ice-free. And wow. That was when I looked at a lot of behavioral patterns in my life and the reoccurring things that would come up quite often, alcohol or drugs were present. And so in me being able to, disappear those things out of my life, things start to show up a whole lot differently in life, and for whatever reason, each and every one of us is at where we're at in life. Each and every person has a story that has had them be on this point where they're going to listen to this video. I've got no idea who will, but there's a path and a way and a means. And some of those people that are going to look at this video, it's going to be a video that's the difference, and it's going to shape how they walk forward in their career, either in the FIFO industry or, more importantly, we want to have it in life as well too, because of the fact that they've got reoccurring conversations that have been going on for themselves for a while. Should I talk something? Do I have to change something up or change something out? Do I have to leave this job? Is this a good environment for me? My relationship, am I in the right relationship? Do I need to leave him or do I need to leave her? Is this where I want to go? Is this even the career that I want to choose? And all of these sorts of conversations that just go on naturally, whether we're in this industry or not. So, that's the approach that we take. And I'm asking them in the rooms, I'm straight up lines. I don't fuck around inside of the sessions. Quite often I'll ask about when we're talking about connection to our leaders there, identify the leaders in the room. What's it like to be led by you? Whether I'm on a 2-on-1 roster, whether I'm on an 8 and 6 or a 2 and 2, how do you send me home to my family?
Yeah. Or just even at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, well, I asked them that too and say, and what's it like for me to work under you for 2 weeks during that time? And again, when I'm asking those leaders that question, I'm continuously reiterating, because it's not a normal conversation with somebody like me, which quite often, I'm all right to swear on here, eh?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, yeah.
I'm sure if people are offended by that, they would have tuned out by now, so go for it.
Yeah, well, you probably wouldn't last long in the fake industry if you don't, but I'm mindful that communication, but it's a good practice for people too, because it's an industry where you get all types of communication. And a part of being able to remain powerful in the industry is that, to a degree, you've got to train some of your senses to be with stuff that you might normally be with as well too, in language. I'm only talking in language, not referring to anything else at all.
Leon, so are you saying don't go up there if you're a big snowflake? Is that what you're saying?
Well, we're not even allowed to say that these days. Well, what I'm saying is that if you're easily offended by language, you're in for a rude shock in this industry.
Yeah.
And what I do like about the FIFO industry is that people, they cut raw, they cut real, they say things straight up, and it's important in the type of work that goes on there. It's a way and a means. It's not necessarily that it's right at all, but it's the way that they've found that is effective. And inside of that, we shape the way. Obviously there's times and spaces and moments where you pick your opportunities to maybe vent or to speak a particular way. But yeah, it's definitely an industry where coarse language is not a second or third language up there at all.
Yes, some that we have to look at changing potentially, like when we're in our personal lives at home. That's what I found. I was known for having a potty mouth.
Yeah, it's always a challenge. I'm sure that people watching this will agree with that too. But yeah, so I'm asking them those questions for leadership. How do you lead me? But having them see that when for me stepping into that room, one of the things that I've seen is that we've had a mostly male population inside of this industry. I know they use the term a male-dominated industry, as if males are in there dominating every single person. And I think the context of that phrase gets delivered out of context. I think you can hear some shouting in the background and some family rugby league test. So, but
I'm just impressed my dog hasn't gone off his head yet. I'm usually...
Anyway. Yeah, and that they use that term male-dominated sort of industry in that, but it's really male-populated. I'd like to use that term because I say that because not every man is in there sort of domineering or bullying. There's certainly been a change in the way that things are delivered. However, one of the things that I've seen is that men don't, a lot of our men are in the leadership positions. That's going to change, with the influx of ladies and the diversity of inclusion coming into places. Yeah. So in generations to come, we're going to see females that are GMs and foremans and project managers and quite high level leadership. We're still seeing that to a degree already, but predominantly it's still men.
Definitely.
One thing I'll say about men and what I've seen in leadership is males don't manage conversations very well, and some of them might agree with it, but we're not very powerful at managing conversations. We're great with this conversation. We're great with the back end as males of either blowing our stack, or for other males, not every male, and that's what blows a stack, they'll actually withdraw and shut themselves down, and draw away from people. But we've mastered those two ends of the spectrum. Yeah. The ability for us to sort of manage and master the in-between is what will have us show up as effective or ineffective in the workplace or in life. Yeah. And what I see, over and over again is that men are not really powerful managers of conversations and communication inside of the workplaces. So quite often there can be disconnects, or if there is a disconnect, they don't know how to powerfully speak to it. I just had a conversation yesterday, actually, when I was on site about a foreman and another foreman, and they've got differing ideas and differing messages that are getting sent through crews. You do this, you do that. And, people worry about their positions, so they're sort of stuck in the middle of these breakdowns of communication with leaders. And even then, it was interesting because I said to that leader, the real question, or the real focus for you is, how do I have that conversation where we can just talk about the differences and why it's not effective for our crews before we have the blow up? Because as history tells us that as men, it's that conversation where they're butting heads against each other. The only place that it's going to get resolved is that it'll get resolved on the arse end of a blow up, on the arse end of a disagreement. It's going to come to a head, and then as men we blow our stack, and then, hey, I'm sorry, I should have done this, and this is how we're being conditioned. Shake hands, and we, hey mate, well, how did you want to do it? And we've got to train ourselves and teach ourselves and recondition ourselves from having the conversation on the other side of that blow up to coming to have it on this side of the blow up. And that's a conversation structure that applies to everybody in life, because as human beings, regardless of whether they're foremen or males in this sort of industry, as human beings, we tend to leave conversations until it comes to a head and stuff. And, the practice in managing our mental well-being, and a big part of the focus is why I'm getting in to have a look at the way that we're managing things, is the way that I'm managing it effective. If we've got a management structure of our well-being and our relationships in life where things are going to come to a head before it gets sorted, it's probably not the best structure for us. So how do we have those conversations? So that's a lot of the encouragement. I ask the crews, manage you. We ask the question of the leadership, but what's it like to manage you? And quite often people aren't really connected to what it's like to manage groups of, for the site that I went to, 200, 300, 400. What's it like? And one of the things that I've seen for many leaders in our industry is that they might not, when I'm saying that they don't necessarily effectively manage conversations at all.
Yeah. Oh, well, like guys are like that, aren't they? Like, sorry.
Yeah, they can be like that. No. But what in saying that though, Alana, I don't mean to demean or disrespect them in any way, because one thing I'm absolutely clear on is, for all leaders, is that they, the energy that it takes to think, they're constantly thinking of the best way to manage their crews, the best sort of outcome for the crews, the best approach and the best way. And quite often, a lot of them tell me, hey, monkey see, monkey do. I'm only doing what I'm taught to do or what I know to do. We're in companies, the next level of encouragement for a lot of these companies is to pour money into, leadership development. Teach them how to communicate. How do I communicate to a room of 30, 40, 50 or 100 people? How do I communicate, especially for those workers that work on sites where they're getting a lot of females? And now BHP is a great example where they want to do a 50-50 workforce. One of the things behind that, I haven't been to a BHP site, well, last year was the last time that I went up to one there, but the inclusion of women into the workplace creates a different type of conversations that need to be had inside of those workplaces. And managing conversations with females is different to managing, or can be different to managing conversations with males.
Yeah.
The manner in which you're able to communicate is a different approach. It's not always an effective approach to speak to a female the way that you do to a male, or vice versa. Breakdowns in communication with men, especially in this day and age where we're highly criticized for the approach or the manner in which they might communicate. They have to walk on eggshells in relation to a breakdown in a workplace relationship between ladies and ladies. How do they manage that? And again, not a whole lot of men are really, really powerful at being able to do that effectively. And by effective, I mean being able to follow a process through where they can sit down and listen to these ladies, have things shared out so that they absolutely listen to. Because I don't know, you might know, Lance, I've seen that when ladies don't feel listened to, pissed off.
You just cut out at that last bit, but I need to know what you said.
Did I break? Did I?
Yeah, you just broke up.
I was just saying that for men to be, if ladies don't feel listened to at all, it's something that'll irritate them or piss them off, was the phrase that I used. So,
God,
for men, and I've seen this because I get to go out to sites and ladies will come and approach me and talk to me and say, I had a meeting with them and they said it's all sorted, just get over it, or oh look, we're not sure what to do. One of the examples was a couple of ladies that had a breakdown in a relationship. Where one lady just said, I have no idea what's going on here. They called a mediation meeting, and the other lady just walked out of the meeting, said, I'm not doing this. And then the guys just said, oh, what do you want us to do? It's all sorted. She doesn't want to talk. So
they'll probably sweet. Sweet, she's all good.
Well, I mean, that's that's the side of us for as men at different times for different reasons, where, how do we manage that? For men, if it was an example of two men in that situation, they'd probably be made to sit down, because they'd be saying, hey, get your ass back in the room here, we're going to talk this out.
Yeah.
Or it wouldn't be left unresolved. And so these are the challenges and the development that needs to take place at this time in the FIFO industry. And I say at this time because, as I pointed to earlier, in years to come, we're going to have ladies that are in senior leadership positions, which will probably be able to manage these sorts of conversations a little bit differently and maybe possibly more effectively. But these are, some of the types of conversations and the way that we're, creating connection inside of the workplace. We also asked about what's it like to be in relationships with you. We're constantly, having the crews look at the conversations that they're having whilst they're on swing.
Yeah.
What's your conversations like at home? Because as you know, for all of us, when you're up there at work, a lot of the conversations got a work flavour to them. I'm on day shift, or I'm on night shift, or about to go to work, or about not to, I'm going to go and get some crib or dinner or whatever it is. And a lot of them unintentionally are about work, thinking that home life, if you've got a great partner and that's cool, he or she will take care of things, it's all good. They're managing that side of things. But I've seen that that's not an effective structure for us as FIFO workers. They've got to take the time to park the conversations about work and have them about their own personal life too, and really, really check in, make sure that we're filling the cup up there. So, doing that, we're asking those types of conversations. We're sharing, for me, I share a bit about my life and, my drug use, being sexually abused and physically abused. So they're pretty straight up conversations. And these are all things that I know and understand that people have dealt with or still dealing with in life, but being through a divorce and, being through the courts and all of that sort of stuff, and not being able to see your children and all of that, type of things, being in situations where I've really had to have straight up conversations with myself to show up differently in life. And these are all things that we're doing at different times, Lance. And so I have those conversations. We talk about exercise as well, because that's another part of managing our well-being. We're looking at the importance of trying to introduce exercise. For many people that know doing FIFO, you're tired after your 12 hours. What way do I do exercise? It's about having them see an opportunity inside of the way they do life. Hey, where can I implement a little bit of fitness? And we're not talking about being an Iron Man or an Iron Woman or anything like that, but just making sure. One of my practices is always doing press ups and little things like that to keep my strength up as a man. I know that's definitely effective. We're looking at the food that's available too as well. We're looking at the way that we eat our foods, and then we're looking at the way that we think. And lastly, our program will be about spiritual stuff.
Yeah. Sorry, it's just spazzed out for a sec.
Oh, mate, you're right.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, no, 100%. Hey, Leon, you're killing it. And like, back to the communication thing, sometimes it's interpretive, isn't it? Because the way that somebody interprets what's the information that's given to them, or the communication pre-start, or what somebody says to them, then they can go off and like that can tick over in their head for the whole shift, and they're like, what the hell just happened, just because of the way that they've interpreted what just happened, right?
Yeah. No, look, I speak to a lot of that too, Lance, because essentially for me, I know that when I step into any room, the listening that is in the room, or the expression, or the analogy that I use around the way that people listen, is actually based on their past. Right? They're listening in the way that they're going to interpret me and assess while they're sitting there, and that's why I'm telling them, their literal approach is, I'm not here to make anybody wrong, to criticize you in any way, so please don't listen from that space. I want you just to listen for the sake of listening. We can have a look at ourselves today simply because we can have a look at ourselves. Because you're right, there's lots of different ways that have been interpreted, and people will make their own judgments and assessments based upon what they know in life, based upon how they filter life, perceive life, and listen to people as well. So you're most definitely right, and then asking them to listen, from that place of nothing's wrong. Let's look at the areas which we're good at, what that you do well, continue with. If there are areas that we can work on, it's from a place where they don't feel pressured. It's not from a place where they have to actually share anything out with it in a forum at all if they don't choose to, but it's from a place where they can sit back and what they know and the way that they listen and understand life. Because as I said earlier, each and every person in that room, each and every person that'll watch this video has a story, and there's all different sorts of experience that shape the way that they see things. And so we're even working on that too as well. Like you say, you're right, people will perceive things a particular way. So, and people not being able to powerfully sort of complete communication, or to check with the crew that everything's sort of, everybody's on the same page. In my sessions and that, I'm always constantly checking, where are you listening to these? What do you hear when I share what I'm sharing? And you get feedback, and hear people talk and allow them to open up. And a lot of pre-starts these days, we've conditioned them not to communicate. So that, they get in and they get out. It's all done very, very quickly. The least amount of questions, the better. Anybody got anything to say, but they don't really want anybody to say anything unless something's been fucked up. And they say, hey, we're going to report things. But outside of that, we're back to the norm is, let's get it done. Let's get it, and each sort of site varies as well. That's not all sites as well, but the sites where I see and I go on to where they allow people to communicate and open up, where the foremans or the leaders in the room aren't looking at their clocks, right, we need to get out there and get this done. They're getting better outcomes. The work environment's a whole lot different. You can feel the energy in the room is a whole lot different. And what that means for them and for those people that are on their 2-and-2 rosters or their 8-and-6s or 2-and-1s is that they're creating an environment where those people are able to live and to experience work in the best way possible. And the positive in that aspect for them, not only as individuals and as work crews and as companies, is that those people are then entering their R&R, their rest and relaxation break, in the best way that we can possibly present them back to their families, which is a great thing, because on R&R, they're going to be a lot more relaxed. They're going to be able to enjoy their break a lot often. So on the flip side, they'll come back, refreshed, which is what we want. We don't want people in environments where it's toxic, where there's lots of pressure, where they're going home frustrated, tired, angry, which is a shitload of sites that's currently happening on. It's not only the ones that I go to, but ones right across the industry. That's not the type of environment that we want to send, or the way that we want to send our workers home. And if we're going home in that way, then there's certainly things that we need to change inside of that environment. And if we can get them, arriving home in the best state of mind possible, like I say, they'll start having the conversations that they need to at home. They'll start managing themselves a whole lot differently. We put them in a space where they're not constantly under stress, and then going home to rest and recharge their batteries just so that they can come up and pour their energy into the companies again. And then at the end of their careers, or at the end of their contracts or something like that, we've got another burnt out person. And for me, I'm just really passionate that that's something that doesn't exist any longer inside of our industry at all, because we've got incredible people that work inside of our industry. And, I want the reward for their effort and their commitment, and not only that, their commitment and the work that they do to upholding our economy and the great work that they're doing to grow these companies and to grow themselves, is that, we want them to then go home and enjoy that reward, and for everything to be a reflection, at work as it is at home, an encouragement for people to come into our industry. It's not an industry that people should be afraid of, or one where it's always got a negative context to somebody working in this industry.
Yeah. And, all the sexual harassment stuff that's coming out at the moment, I personally think that is, that happens in every industry, but it's just, it is a little bit of a factor of the media kind of blowing it up. So, the one thing I don't want women to, especially new to the industry, is to go in thinking, oh my God, there's rapists and like I'm going to get sexually assaulted and blah, blah, blah. So I think it's something as well that comes down to the mental health, making sure that the communication is like, done properly on site. The guys know how to communicate with these new ladies, especially because we don't want them misinterpreting what's going on, and then next minute, oh, this is going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a conversation that has to be managed in the right way possible, because factually speaking, from the findings of these inquiries and investigations, from the fact that people have been charged. Actually, I remember our time on Barrow Island when there was a fuckwit up there, and I say a fuckwit because that's what he was. Shared a video, shared an intimate video of him and his partner after they'd broken up.
Oh,
yeah. A video that went around the whole site.
Yeah.
And people like that are fuckwits, and I'll say that anywhere, anytime, any place.
Yeah.
There is definitely those types of people up there. There are sadly people that have been raped or sexually assaulted, sexually harassed, and all of these things. That's a reality and a sadness in our industry. So it's not something that we sort of, want to sweep under the carpet or say that it doesn't happen everywhere, because it's happening.
Yeah.
The broader conversation for us is for us to consider, how is it that we eradicate that out of our industry. You're right. Not one thing that I'm clear on is that not each and every man displays or portrays those sorts of actions upon ladies. So I've met so many incredible men that come along and have so much experience and share things, but there's definitely an element, and one of the things that they're identifying is alcohol's got a lot to do with it. So there's times that it might not necessarily be in the work environment or at work itself. It is in the work environment, in the sense that some of these things are taking place at camps and that around alcohol use and all of that sort of stuff. But nonetheless, no women or no men should in any way, should that be a means or an excuse for people to be sexually exploited or even raped or an attempted rape or anything like that at all. It's going to take some straight up conversations around our industry to make sure that we're eradicating that sort of behaviour and identifying individuals that are displaying that, and just, having them charged, if that's the means and the ways that it has to go, then have them charged, have them out of the industry, so that we're making our environment as safe as possible. It's so important. Look, I know those, at different times I heard stories shared this week about a guy on one of the sites that I've travelled to had been accused of sexual misconduct or sexual assault, actually, and then the findings were that he actually had it. Once they investigated into it, that wasn't the case at all. There's a huge breakdown in communication, and he had actually taken steps for it not to look the way that it did. And he was let off, but for him, his reputation in the industry was shot. There is the flip side where it's happening, and it's happening often, and it's happening in particular companies, and that is they're identifying, which is obviously we've got to look at culture in those sorts of environments. We've got to make sure that this place is these sorts of things are not happening at all. I think it's a conversation in part that men have to have with men as well. So these are conversations that I know that I'll be encouraging the company that I work for us to be able to create, because it's not one that I want to sidestep around as well. If men need to be told that, hey, I'm happy to be one of the men.
Hey, Leon.